Welcome to another episode of Love Living Local 315. We are your hosts, Scott and Kelly Greats, and today we welcome into the studio Joram Stephenson, co-founder of UNRVLD Media, a creative firm bringing bold storytelling to social media. From software engineer to video production, Joram is redefining content creation right here in Central New York. We'll dive into his journey, his latest projects, and what it takes to build a brand that stands out and above the rest. Let's get into it. All right, Joram, UNRVLD. Give us the backstory. How did it all start?
Well, how it started as a group, I was working in school, basically. I met my business partner, Khalif, and we had a little bit of a friendship. He was doing mostly like dance content. He was like big into dancing and the different trends associated with that. And I don't remember specifically how it started, but he asked me to help him like edit a video that he was doing. And so I helped him with that, and we started doing a couple more. And then we were thinking, oh, maybe we should make this into something bigger. And I've always had the idea of, I think business has always been something that I've been interested in, but after college, there's not a lot of challenges after that. Once you get your job, there's not a progression that happens each couple of 4 years. So I was like, oh, let's pick something that's big. And initially the idea was, let's try to do something that we think is very approachable. And that was originally clothing. And we went through a process of that, finding out the difficulties of like creating a product from scratch.
Yeah.
Are you going to have all this like, all this inventory? What are you going to do with it? Learning about like fulfillment services that you can do on demand. And from that process, there might have been 2 years or so, we progressed through that and gained a lot of experience creating a product and the story around it. And when we came to the point where we were, I think it was our second collection, we were selling a shirt, basically. So I was going to show you guys those shirts, but didn't get the sizes. Originally, we had created those from scratch, dyeing each of them. So there was a unique pattern where you just like rumple it up, etc., dye that out, and we made over 100 of them by hand. It took like weeks to do, and we were selling them on like a web front, essentially. A couple of people purchased those. They were not as big as we would have hoped, essentially, and we looked at them and said, what can we do better? And the area that we found was, what is the marketing? What's the story behind this? How are people supposed to be connected to the product? So the next step, the next product we did was around a topic of like heartbreak. It was called the Torn Collection. And we took that, we did a little bit more effort on what are we selling, not just the product, but what is the story behind it. And we did like a video shoot for it, proper photo shoots on it, casted out models, etc. And that one did a lot better than the one previously. We also, instead of taking all of the inventory and doing it ourselves, where if you don't sell it, now you have boxes stacked up, we went to a on-demand printing service where you send them the designs, you send them the process that you want, and then as an order comes in, you basically take some of the money that got created at that sale, and then you give it to them to fulfill it one by one. So those two things are things that we learned out of that, the improvement of the story and the improvement of like the business process itself. But still, having a clothing or like a B2C kind of business is very difficult without a large audience, without a large like group that you are helping. So we were thinking, what can we do next? It's a business that has to be profitable. It has to have some sort of income that's reliable, right? And we said, there's all these skills that we learned from doing these different pieces, building a website, making the story, casting, directing, photography, videography. Why don't we sell those to other people? There's other people who have existing audiences. I think it's time that we take our skills and give that as a service to others. And that's kind of what we've been doing for the past 2 years, and that's where we are now.
Yeah. So
you're not making the product.
We're not making the product. We're enabling the product.
You're helping,
brought to the audience.
Yeah. On a smaller scale, that is the Amazon model. You know, like I sell books on Amazon. I've never bought my own book. I don't have to ship my own book. Like if you go on there right now, they'll print it on demand and send it out, and they make more money selling my books than I do, which is genius for them. Where's school? You said you guys hooked up in school.
We met at Utica College or Utica University now.
Yep.
We didn't really know each other that much until maybe like my junior year or so. We both were cyber majors at the school. And yeah, that's kind of how our friendship started.
I love the idea that, you know, we're presented so many different subject areas in school. Mm-hmm. So we kind of get a feel for what we like, what we don't like, whatever. And then when you mentioned once you get your job, you're kind of pigeonholed, right? You're painted into a corner. So I love that you're exploring all these different avenues and continuously educating yourself. And then before you ask your question, one more thing. Have you seen, this is years ago, the study on eBay where they took like, and I'll butcher this, but you'll get the idea, like 40 different items they bought for $1.
Okay.
And then they had professional storytellers craft stories around the description, and they reposted it on eBay and sold those same $41 items for like $600-something combined. Once you add the story to it, that's what people buy.
More attached to it,
is the story. So I'm excited about digging deeper into that.
Especially with social media, and we need to talk about that. Like storytelling through video is so powerful right now through social media. What makes it so enjoyable for you?
For me, the enjoyable part is a lot of it is the process. If you talked to my business partner, he would be a lot more interested in like the creative aspect of how you implement that story and the different like elements that you include into that. But for me, it's like looking at all of the different pieces that are necessary to bring those together and taking all the resources and bringing it together to a finished product that looks good. I think it's more the logistics that excites me.
Okay.
But that is, I guess that's my role in our business. So.
Yeah, there's a great book called Rocket Fuel, and it talks about how you need a visionary and an implementer in any partnership. Well, let's talk about it, because I'm a visionary myself. I'm not good with logistics, but where do you start with a client, right? So if you're working with a small to mid-sized business and they want to bring their brand, which is really what we're talking about, their story to life, like what does that process look like?
Really what we do many times before we would even reach out to them is we look at their current social media strategy, look and see what they're currently doing as far as like what kind of content they're bringing in or they're creating, what is their audience, what is the products that they're selling or services that they're offering, and then what is their controversy risk, essentially. So looking at one of the things that social media is really good at is highlighting things that people want to talk about, right, or people feel contentious about. And different brands have more or less of like a tolerance to those. So like maybe a very like family-friendly brand isn't going to be able to discuss certain topics that might do well on social media but don't fit with their brand. So understanding that's important. And then going to them and talking to them on what are your goals with this content and what are you able to commit to. Because many times people look at social media and they see all of the like great success stories of a business popping off of a strategy that was put together or a video that you just see that one video. But what is very rarely understood, I guess maybe for people who are not into it, is there's usually like a slew of pieces that didn't do as well that grew up to that point. And so if a business is not, or an individual is not committed to taking that process and bringing their brand with them through that process, then many times they'll stop because they're not seeing the results that they're looking for, and then no one is benefiting out of that. So those would be like where we start from.
So you have a background in software engineering. How do you feel like that skill has helped you with this?
If you ask my partner about this, a business partner, he would say, I'm very analytical. What I have, I guess, used this for is looking at existing systems that either relate to the business that we're doing or maybe it's something else, and finding how that can apply to what we're trying to do, and really breaking down the processes that we're observing and applying the pieces that make sense for the goal we're trying to accomplish.
All right, Unrivaled, and we'll tag this, is capital U, all caps, UNRVLD. Where'd that come from?
The idea, or you're talking about just the stylization? Or
yeah, like it's not an acronym, right?
It's not. It's just a stylization of the word Unrivaled.
Okay,
but
so just a different take on the word.
The concept of Unrivaled, for me, came from our business name is Unrivaled Energy LLC. So the concept is, I think that there's a certain energy that greatness embodies, right? And it's not something that you own, it's something that you embody. It exists already. And the goal is to be able to be in as good alignment with that energy as possible, and to do it for as long as possible. And so what I would like is to be able to embody the spirit of greatness and take it into all the things that we do. And that's where it came from.
That's awesome.
Awesome.
All right, let's talk about a couple of things you produced. Unrivaled Kitchen. What's it about?
So essentially, that is our first produced show that we did. It's really a take on like the show Chopped, essentially, where you take a bunch of contestants and you throw them in a situation in the kitchen where they have a set of ingredients, and they have specific ingredients where they have to use in the finished product or the finished like meal. And then they have a time limit, and you just throw them into there and see them
So
panic,
much fun.
figure it out, and come out with something, and then they're judged by the other participants.
We watch it
yeah.
all the time.
Yeah.
I love to cook, so that's right up my alley. So that's awesome.
Where'd you film that?
We got like an Airbnb, and then figured it out from there. Yeah,
Okay.
that's really what.
But where did you find, like, were they chefs?
No, these were like no, they were not chefs. The goal was to find like really like people who have somewhat of like a social media footprint and bring them into the show, because one, their audience is going to be more interested in seeing them in a new environment that they're not used to. So one of them is like a model, the other one was a DJ, and people are not used to seeing them in the kitchen. They're used to seeing them in their space and presented as they are.
Yeah.
So it's fun to see. I think their audience enjoyed seeing them in a new environment with new challenges and how they operate.
That's awesome.
Well, what's cool about that is, you know, in this AI world, and we don't know what's real and what's not more than ever, and I'm sure you'll agree, like people want to see the authentic you. And when you put them in that situation where they're not comfortable, you know, sometimes self-included, we get very scripted with what we do and the things we say, but now over there you're forced to be real and you're forced to be you, so now more importantly, how the hell did you find judges for this if you've got people that don't know how to cook with random ingredients and now I've got to taste this?
So the judge part, that was the difficult part. So originally I wanted to have like a separate set of like judges, but where are you going to find like people who have like a cooking
Culinary background, right?
Yeah, culinary background to map it. So instead, we just had them judge each other. So we had 3 contestants. One person cooked, and then the other 2 were judging and taste testing the finished meal.
Okay.
So it kind of worked itself out, and they were all self-judging the food. So
That could be like a fun, just riffing here, but a fun family. Or even a team
building activity to
take
get
like our
all of your employees and like give them a basket and say make something with it.
That could be cool. Yeah, we're always looking for like off campus, so to speak, out of the office team building stuff, just ways to have fun and
definitely is a nice
great.
nice way to see.
All right, so let's rent an Airbnb and we'll have Joram and his crew come and we'll make some cool video content for the socials. I mean,
and so you've got another one, merry-go-round, right?
So merry-go-round was I'll call it a microfilm because of the length. This was like more of my business partner's project. So the concept there was about portraying the cycle of a relationship, or a cycle of like maybe like what would we call it, a love triangle, I guess. Okay. Of how that plays out, of there being 2 people vying for the same person, and how that person chooses who they want, essentially. It was to the song Merry-Go-Round. I forgot the name of the singer, but it was really inspired by that song.
And then I feel like I read something about Shark Tank, right?
Yeah, so that's a new concept that we're coming up with.
All right, cool.
I can explain it here.
Yeah, that would be great.
The idea there is Shark Tank dating. So that's just a working title. I think it sounds good, but we'll see how that ends up in post. But the idea is, I'm sure you guys have all seen Shark Tank.
Yes.
Oh, yeah.
The sharks are there. Someone's presenting an idea, and you get to see how they interact with that. So the idea would be there's going to be sharks, which are going to be an assortment of women who are like older, more experienced, have their idea of like who do they want, like what type of man do they want, what are the things they're looking for, right? And then you take groups of guys of 2. One is like the person that's being like the suitor who is trying to win over the sharks, right? And then their friend who is going to be presenting them. And we are going to have like some form of presentation or like show that they're going to be using to try to show this is someone, this is what they do, and this is what we want you to be invested in. Like maybe it's a date or a date night that looks like this, and can you convince the sharks that you are worth their time?
Okay.
Yeah. Get the legal team ready. We have some contracts for you to sign before you go on that date.
Definitely gotta write these contracts.
All right, but all kidding aside, cool idea. It's something I could totally see on a major network. So what is the goal, right? When you produce something like that, you know, what's success? What's a win?
So the goal. This would not probably be for this one, but the goal is to be able to sell these to like streaming platforms, et cetera, and have them, maybe it's a pilot, right? And then figure out some type of deal from that. But before we get to that point, we have to be able to technically be able to fulfill at the spec necessary for wider distribution, right? So we're kind of working our way to the point where it fulfills the spec. There's spec that these streaming platforms or just networks in general are expecting, whether it's like the quality of the footage, how that show is like put together. If you're presenting on something like a network with ads, right? How are you breaking that up to make sure it makes sense for their platform? All those things are things that we need to get to a level where it makes sense that it can be presented in that way. We're not there yet, but that is the goal that we're working towards.
And I think, and I don't know, it's probably been done, but I think bringing kids our age, late teens, you know, juniors, seniors, high school, even, you know, college kids, into that Shark Tank, but making it like what we do, locally focused, right? So we've got kids in this area who are loaded with great ideas, right? And they don't know where to go or how to share it, and setting up local sharks, you know, and giving these kids a platform to pitch their ideas. And I don't know what the prize is. I mean, it wouldn't be 10% equity and millions of dollars like they do on Shark Tank, but you know, come up with some sort of prize. I think that would be a cool idea.
So let's talk about community. You believe in the power of community, helping out your community. So how has Central New York shaped you as an entrepreneur? How has our community changed the way that you think and how you're approaching your business?
I would say Central New York is like is the first place for me where I have like focused more community based and not just like what my goal is.
Money.
Either money or just what is it that I'm trying to approach, and not necessarily like engaging the community to achieve that goal. One thing that is nice about like this area, and I think upstate in general, is it's very approachable. If you have an idea that you're trying to approach, you're only like 1 or 2 degrees away from that person. It's not so big of a market where it's if you really want to achieve it, you can go and reach those people. You just have to talk to someone who knows them or present something to them in a way that makes sense for them, and you can reach almost anyone in this area. And so for me and my business, this being something, I didn't go to school formally for business, I haven't gone to school formally for the work that we've done, it's been very important to have that social proof, right? To do things that the community cares about so that that community is invested in the work that you're doing and invested in you also helping them with the things that they're trying to approach.
Nice.
The more conversations we have, the more we see these common denominator themes popping up. And this is one of them. We just talked about it with Mark Chico, that, you know, this area is big enough to not be really small, but small enough to not be really big.
That's true.
And when it comes to networks and connections and trying new things, I mean, to your point, it's a great place to experiment.
Absolutely.
And connect with others. And,
and I think as a community, we all just want to help each other out with their businesses and with their visions.
And some want to help nobody, and we know those people, and we just stay away from them.
That's true. They do exist
in any community.
But I think there's ways around it. So if you do end up with like a roadblock somewhere, there's 3 or 4 other routes that you can go to. Maybe it's not the top option, but there's ways to achieve it that are very possible compared to like a bigger market.
Yep.
Where you might not even be able to see those people because you have to go through 4 and 5 levels of bureaucracy.
You got to know somebody that knows somebody that knows somebody. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And you get lost, you know, you become a small fish in a big pond in some of these big areas. I want to talk about, you're an athlete, and I think there's a direct correlation with athletes and success in the real world, the business world. You talk about pushing through some pain and adversity. How has that piece of your life helped you in the business side?
So my background is track and field. I did that for probably all of my until college. I didn't do any sports in college, but until that point, all I had done was running. And one of the things that is unique about running as a sport, whether it's track or cross country, whatever way that you're doing it, is it's individually judged. You are running in a very measurable way. It's just your time. There is no other attribute of, oh, well, I didn't get the ball. It wasn't passed to me.
Yeah. Ref made a bad call.
Did you run? And did you get to that point faster than the other people?
Yep.
And that's all it is. So I think it brought a lot of accountability to me as far as am I doing everything that I need to do? And it, I think, designed a way for me to look at the world where there are people who are in various arrangements across I would say the spectrum of a goal, right? There's people that are higher up who are closer to perfection in that area, right? And there's people that are lower on that rung. And are you able to climb up that? Are you able to push through and figure out what's necessary to make your abilities reach the times or the level that you're trying to reach? And there's not a lot that you can do to make yourself think it's anyone else's fault. You have to really look at yourself and say, these are the things that I'm doing right now. Why have I not reached this area? And that's something you have to be able to reconcile with yourself and find that answer in order to get to the next level.
And perseverance, because I'm telling you, sometimes when you run, you feel like you can't go any further, but you
That
push
is
past that
definitely true.
point and you get there and you're like, I did it. You know, it's pushing through that
Barriers.
that point of I can't do this, but your body keeps
Breaking
going and
your
you
limits,
do it.
yeah.
Yeah, you really do. So let's talk about that a little bit. And looking back, what's one thing you wish you knew when you started?
Working in business, you're saying?
Yeah.
I would say definitely the community aspect. Like I said, just about the track idea, it being an individual sport. One of the blind spots there is in business, it isn't an individual sport.
Mm-hmm.
You have a team of people that you're working with, and not just a team of people. You have people that are in associated organizations around you that can also support you, and you guys mutually, use synergy in order to reach your guys' goals faster.
Mm-hmm.
And in the very beginning, I was very closed-minded to that idea. Maybe that's a blind spot from the sports that I've played, right?
Mm-hmm.
But as I've gotten more as I've matured more in our business and just my understanding of how the world works, collaborating with other entities that are doing similar things or where there's some kind of value add that can be made will allow you to reach your goal a lot faster than if you try to do it just on the back of your own 2 feet. Because it's possible to do it that way, but we don't have 1,000 years on this planet, right? So
Mm-hmm.
there's no reason to try to just do it all by yourself because it's already hard enough to reach the goals that we're looking for. And there's no reason, I guess it's really just pride that makes someone not want to engage with their community in order to move forward.
Yeah, and really what you're talking about, and this is difficult for many, is adopting a true abundance mindset, right? There's so many people that think, well, if Joram wins, then I lose, right? Like a race. Or if you have something, I can't have it.
Yeah.
And once you get to the point of collaboration where it's like, hey, there's plenty for all of us, that abundance mindset.
I think that's something where I think that's true. There is plenty for all of us, but there isn't necessarily plenty in the same way. So it's about finding your way maybe laterally instead of just following that same straight line.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe there isn't. There's a limit and there's only a limited resources in this specific path. But if you adjust slightly, there might be a whole new path that you can take advantage of.
Well, it's widely believed that there are no new thoughts.
That is true.
And if everything has already been thought or discovered, now it's what's your spin on it? What's your flavor? And that goes back to the authenticity. And, it's like ice cream. Everyone knows ice cream, but there's 80-something different flavors. And what, type of ice cream you like might not be what I like, but we can all do well in ice cream.
All right, so balancing. You definitely wear many hats. You're a software engineer during the day. You're a part business owner. You're also a landlord. How do you manage your time across all of this?
That's something that, well, you just do the highest priority things first. That is something that I'm good at. I don't know that it's the best way of doing it. I've tried like other methods of organizing things, but it ends up very often just falling back into what has to be done first. And once I feel a certain amount of like, then I just do those things.
See, and that's how we function. Like,
I don't know
make a
if that's-
list. Make a list. These are your must-dos today. These are the things
Essential
I would
list.
like to get done.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Big rocks, small rocks.
for sure.
How are you good at delegating, or are you a control freak?
I'm pretty good. Well, I've gotten better. I've gotten better at delegating. I think,
Out of necessity, right? If you have
yeah,
to.
like like I was saying about the idea of it, of like, are you going to walk on your own two legs, or are you going to
Count on other people.
count on other
Yeah.
people in order to get there faster and better? And as I've gotten more along that mindset, then that means like I have to rely on other people. Now, I definitely would say I'm very like disciplined. Or I try to enforce some level of discipline in whatever that thing is that I'm delegating, but it still can't be handled by me. They need to take ownership of that and take pride in accomplishing that well.
Mm-hmm.
What's your vision for the future?
That's a very, let's say like 5 years or something.
Sure.
The goal would be for us to, well, the goal for me would be to get the business to a point where I don't have to wear as many of those hats, I guess, right?
Mm-hmm.
I can just make decisions from like the ownership standpoint and not have to actually function in the other roles that are necessary to do. Like, I don't have to be all the cogs of the wheel.
Yep.
So that would be the goal.
But you're, like you said, you're very particular. So you almost need to mentor somebody and teach them how to
That
do
is kind
things
of
in
what
the way,
happens.
yeah, the
That
way
is-
that you want things done. Training, for sure.
That's the transition, right? That's where you're at when you scale a business. And there's a great book by Michael Gerber called The E-Myth, and it's the entrepreneurial myth. And he talks about shifting from working in your business to working on your business. And, that's definitely where you're at right now.
I definitely could use more experience in that area. I think what I learn best is by like seeing what other people are doing. And one of the issues in business is it's kind of difficult to see what people are doing from the inside standpoint. You see what they're promoting, you see what's going on, but it's really about me, I guess, building those relationships where I can learn the skills necessary and the people who have already gone and done that before and see how that applies to where I am now.
So you've said your biggest fear is wasted potential.
Mm-hmm.
What does that mean? How do you?
I think that ties somewhat into my upbringing. I think I grew up in a pretty religious household with a religious family. And I think that the idea of like not wasting God's blessings that you were given and that it being somewhat of like you're being disrespectful if you're taking what you have and saying, I'm not going to interact with this, or I'm not going to take this to the fullest potential. And then also like growing up where I did grow up, there were a lot of like affluent, I lived in like an affluent neighborhood, but my family wasn't. And so seeing all these other people where I was like, oh, I wish I had this type of life, right? And if I had this type of life, oh, I would do this, right? Which obviously in their perspective, that they wouldn't have that same motivation. But seeing that, I think, made me really want to, if I get to this spot, this is where I'm going to go. And this is, if I can see this, then I want to be able to maximize the vision from that point forward.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I love it. You're referring really to the proximity rule there. And,
is that?
just you surround yourself with the people you want to become, or, you become the things that you surround yourself with, to say it
That
the
is
other
true.
way around, And so growing up in an affluent neighborhood and being like, well, they can do it, why can't I do it?
Exactly.
And you start to learn things that they're doing that can help you get there.
Or even when he said about the faith aspect
Yeah,
of it too, like
that's
we
powerful.
are all given this opportunity by it's a God-given opportunity, and what are you going to do with it? Like,
Yeah.
What really drives me is legacy and that wasted. I'm with you with the wasted opportunity for myself, because you start looking at the top regrets of the dying,
and it's very
and
tough.
nobody's ever mad. I shouldn't say nobody, but very few are upset with the things that they tried. They're upset with the things they didn't try, you know, and that's wasted opportunity, which is what they're regretting.
If I'm dying and I could say that I did as much as I could towards my goal, and this is just where it was when I ended, then I'll be happy with that.
Yeah.
But if I look back and I say, damn, if I hadn't have given up on this, or if I had pivoted instead, maybe I would be somewhere else, then that would be something.
You don't want to be asking what if questions.
Or I wonder.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure.
All right, we got 8 questions. We call them rapid fire. Some are, some aren't. But 8 questions to wrap up here.
Okay.
We'll try to go fast.
If you could create a documentary on anything, what would it be?
Documentary on anything. You said this would be rapid fire.
Yeah.
This is a hard one to think about. I think something that's interesting right now is like the small local governments. I think that's something that doesn't get highlighted enough in our current like political environment. And there's a lot of like funky things that happen in like small governments, a lot of weird corruption, things that doesn't really, no one really looks at. So I think it'd be interesting to identify, like to really look into those smaller areas and see
That's a great
stuff that's
point
going
because
on.
we elect a ton of people that sit on that hold certain like
Gonna get in
positions,
trouble.
and I'm
They're
like,
just sitting there.
what is their actual
Controller.
job? Like, what are they doing?
I think that would be something interesting.
If you put me in that documentary, I want my voice to be like, blah, 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 and my face to be blurred out.
Anonymous business owner.
anonymous, yeah. That's great.
And I like that you said weird corruption. I'm like, what other the corruption's corruption.
But it's in ways where if it was done on a larger scale, people would clearly call it out.
Sure.
But because it's a small town and everyone knows each other, they're like,
yeah. They just turn their back. Yeah, for sure.
What's the wildest idea for a show that you've ever had?
wildest idea. There have been wild ideas, but I don't know if I can say them on this program.
We can leave it at that. Yeah. Well, we can leave it at Swinger Shark Tank.
There's been ideas that you're like, okay, but who would be able to be like a sponsor for this? And it's like, well, I can't do that. Even though
There's a market for everything.
Best place in Utica for creative inspiration.
Eagle Point over by the zoo. It's like a lookout.
Okay.
You see, if you go up there, you'll see like down into the valley. You'll see all the way across. And you can see like Trenton and
Cool.
North Utica, et cetera.
All right.
Good tip. What's the favorite moment that you've captured on film?
Favorite moment captured on film. There was a show that we did earlier that was like reactions to like different YouTube content, and there was a lot of like funny moments where we would watch like a show or something like that was going on and just laughing at like the human dynamics that happened there. So I think a lot of those like more intimate times where those are fun to capture.
Yeah, going back to being real.
Go to local food spot.
Nina's Pizza. Let's do that.
All right.
Where's Nina's?
It's in downtown Utica. You know where Utica Coffee is? It's in that same little
right down
plaza.
there. Okay, yeah, I got you.
Yeah, it's right
I
next
got you.
door.
All right, I'm going to put your creative juices to work here. If Central New York had a tagline, what would it be? We'll say this ugly. This is how the creative process works. We say it ugly first, and then we refine it.
Tagline, it would be something like small but powerful, Central New York, or small but impactful. That's what I would say.
Okay,
Yeah.
like it.
All right. What's one thing people don't realize about video production?
It's expensive and it takes a lot of time to plan.
How do people connect with you?
You mean like what do I?
You
social
personally,
medias,
the
or-
business, yeah. Like, what's the best way to find
contact
you
me
and Unrivaled
is-
Media?
Oh yeah, our Instagram. Unrivaled Joram is mine. UNRVLD.Joram and UNRVLD.Media.
All
Those
right,
are the 2 accounts.
Joram Stephenson. It's been a pleasure, my friend.
Thank you
for
so
having
much.
me.